Welcome to another OCD Recovery Instagram Live. Today, I'm going to be talking all about uncertainty, how it relates to OCD recovery and uncertainty in life. I'm not going to be covering a question and answers format on here. I'm just going to be looking at this topic. So let's look at uncertainty and what's involved. So in our lives, it's obviously very uncertain, but we tend to think it's much more certain than it is. We get into our bed safe at night. We think, oh, because I'm safe in bed at night and the walls around me have been here for the last 10, 20 years, however long you've lived in your place. And you think, this room's the same, my bed's the same, my body looks the same. Everything must be certain, but that's not true at all. That's just based on the idea that things were the same prior to the day, so other things were in place, which means that they're certain. Same as when you drive a car. You know, there's a risk that we could get in a nasty crash, but we focus on other uncertainty things and then take that just as, that's part of life. And because we've been in no car crashes prior, usually, we think, it's unlikely to be a car crash coming along. It's rare. It's very, very rare. Even though we're sort of hurtling down a motorway at a very fast speed in this metal box with a thing across our chest, a seatbelt, we could easily end up upside down, car on fire, and have a very sort of uncomfortable, very painful experience if we die in there in a fire. But we never think about that whatsoever. We just go along with it as part of our life, because we've got so used to that, viewing that as certain. We've done it so many times, we think each day is going to go the same. And that's how our life goes until changes happen, and then we think, things aren't certain. So we go with this illusion of certainty that we sort of follow along and we believe in, until we get to points where we're like, actually, things aren't as certain as we think. Nothing is certain. Like Voltaire said, certainty is absurd. But we think things are certain. None of us know how long we're going to live. I could drop down dead on this Instagram Live. I've got no guarantee that I'm even going to survive now. I think, it's unlikely because I haven't died in previous times. There's no guarantee it couldn't happen. And that goes for anything in life. There's so much uncertainty involved in all areas. Now, let's look at our lives, how much they're changing in relation to the future, futuristic changes, okay? So our world that we have known is currently changing very quickly, faster than we know, in so many areas. Just look at the amount we are using technology. This mobile phone, for example, I'm using to do this Instagram Live, and then WhatsApp to speak to people with OCD, our Facebook groups. Think about how much time people are spending online in the last 10 years. It's changing. It's speeding up our life, communication, very fast news, fast information, new forms of treatment that we weren't able to get before, all kinds of things like that. And it's changing at such a speed we're completely unaware of it. We're living more virtually than we are actually in the sort of our reality world, and it's almost becoming secondary, our life, to the new virtual world. The virtual world's faster, quicker information, so we want that because it's more exciting to us. Even if it's detrimental to our own health and so on, we still like that because of the speed that we can get things and the excitement we can get from things. You've only got to look at computer games, how much time people are spending on them in these virtual worlds, and how they're sort of almost living in that with social media as well. I'm just going to go to a room where, let me shut this door because someone's doing some drilling in a flat next door. So you've got all those worlds sort of changing. Our whole reality is changing. Now, let's look at WhatsApp. Let's look at our lives, what we are. Now, this could be triggering for existential OCD, but it's a great exposure, and it's great to look at our life like this and to see it. Let's think of our realities even with WhatsApp. For example, in the last year with COVID, I've spoken to my mum via WhatsApp for the last year and a half. And I've spoken to her mainly on WhatsApp. I've seen her a few times because she lives in a different country. But most of the time, I've spoken to her on WhatsApp. So if my mum, let's say really sadly passed away, I would have WhatsApp messages from the last year and a half of me and my mum communicating. So that would mean that I would be able to see all the way I've been communicating with her for the last year and a half, which is like a kind of virtual ghost of my mum. It's like a layer of my mum, because I can see her on some level in those messages and relate to that. And then if we actually look at human beings, which are sort of almost like a kind of chemistry set, kind of computer, that's what we are in terms of how we function, do everything. You've then got, okay, so I've still got memories of my mum, the interaction, but when I was using the phone, I was interacting with her as if she was here. So to me, that's almost like some level of relationship with my mum, even though it's through those messages. Now that's the same as phone, the communication now. You're not seeing me in front of you as a person and thinking, I can feel this person, that's Robbie's there, but you know that this projection of me is realistically me. Could be a hologram or something, or a virtual reality in the future. We're not there yet, but you've got a rough idea. So you relate to me through this. So everything is becoming very, very virtual. Now, if we look at, so we've got people living in computer games more, we've got people communicating through WhatsApp, social media, online dating, tons of relationships are formed prior to even meeting the human person. You've got so many different things like that we forget about, we don't think about. That is just part of our day-to-day life, which has become very digital now. Now then you've got to look at other things which are changing. We've got things like so we've got, say for example, Elon Musk looking to invent Neuralink, which will be able to connect us to the computer, to the phone, so we can retrieve information much faster than our thumb can move around on the phone, which will change things. May very likely change mental health, be able to cure anxiety disorders and depression in the brain just through that neural link. I think very likely in the next 10 to 20 years. So that's another area that you've got massive change happening. Now then we're going to be connected into the computer more, and we're living in sort of this more virtual based world. You've got things like NFTs, with the art world changing, with things becoming digital. All art could become digital. We may view art like we did modern art of the 80s and so on. In the future, all becomes modern. It becomes on a computer and in a sort of digital world. That might happen. We've got cryptocurrencies maybe becoming the future money. I mean, I think that's very likely, and I've always been a huge fan of the crypto, what crypto's changing and allowing people to have free access to their money without it all getting washed down by inflation, and being able to transfer money to anyone wherever they are in the world, whichever country, 24 hours a day, not having to wait for a bank to give approval on things. So it gives humans a great range of freedom and will change the world. I've been a huge fan of that for a long time, and so you're going to see that changing in terms of things like that. So now let's look at, this is just a very short sort of immediate future possible changes, because it could all fade out or not work and other ones come into play. And so when you look at these things and these changes, we're going into a digital world that's very, very uncertain, and we don't know how it could turn out. Like with the COVID situation, we wouldn't have expected that, and we didn't know how that was going to turn out. And then we've started to get more comfortable again. Initially, many of us thought, we were all going to die, or how bad could this be, or what could the effect be on the world? And then we change and adapt, and things change. Nothing is certain. So the world is changing at incredible pace. Things are changing very fast. We've got a situation where, if you think how quick technology has changed since you've been using this phone in the last 10 years, then think about how much things are going to be changing in the next 10 years. You can't even picture it. You can't even imagine it. You can't even think of how things are going to fork off and change in different directions in the next 10 years. It's very difficult to say what thing will become popular. Will humans adapt to things? Will they not want things? And so on. So the world is so incredibly uncertain, but we tend to go with this whole illusion of it's so certain and we know everything's safe. It isn't. People are dying, people are getting ill, people are recovering, people are changing, people are moving to different parts of the world, people are living in remote places more, people aren't going to stay in the same place, people are travelling more due to cheaper travel. Not in this COVID situation at the moment so much, but people still do. So the world's going to become this place where people are obviously travelling all over the place, they'll be living in different places, they'll be interacting with humans differently. The world is changing in an incredible way, and this is all uncertain. Now, why does this apply to OCD recovery? It applies 100%. Why? Because with OCD, you have got a situation where you are intolerant to uncertainty. You hate that. You do not like that. You want an answer. Even if it's the answer you don't want to hear, you still want that. You want to know, is this going to happen, even if it's something you don't want? It's that low frustration tolerance to an uncertain sensation internally. That's what it is. You've got this low frustration tolerance to an uncertain sensation internally. So as soon as you feel that, you don't want that, you don't trust that, you internally reject that, then comes the compulsions and so on. Of course, you've got the anxiety cycles in relation to harm OCD, all the themes of OCD that are a little bit more complex than just uncertainty, obviously, hence why we work with unconditional self-life and other acceptance. But much of our problems comes from wanting to escape this moment, this second, wanting to run from this when it's uncertain and not what we like, not when we don't like that feeling or we don't know. People often say, I'd rather just know I have that disease than waiting in the doctor's waiting room. That's the worst part. That's the scariest part for me. I can't stand that part. And so there's so much of that all lingering in that uncertain territory internally. It's an internal sensation of uncertainty. We want certainty. Everything's sold to us on certainty. If you go and buy a car, the picture of the car in the showroom is usually a couple opening the door of the car, the children in the back, the car interior looking comfortable, and a green field or a nice restaurant parked by the car to convey the image of comfort and safety and relate to the people that would likely buy that car. Now that is exactly the same in situations with everything we're buying, doing, choosing, everything. It's relating to our ideas of how we think about certainty. Certainty is what humans want. Because uncertainty, they relate to danger. Now the problem is, we think we want that certainty, but that uncertainty is where all the magic and all the amazing things happen. You know, things that are more certain aren't as exciting. If you were doing an investment, for example, and it was the safest thing out, it'd probably offer a very low return. So it's not going to be very exciting, but it's going to be very safe. So if you look at a situation where, I was going to quote somebody there, but I've forgotten the philosophy quote, but it's basically saying if you want a life that's completely certain, well, it's more or less like being dead, because there's nothing happening. It's just so rigid. There's no excitement. We want uncertainty. We want to go with a balanced approach. We don't want to be signing up for every extreme sport and taking crazy risks in our careers and everything. We can do, but it's not always the best outcome. It's best to have a balance. But then take things a bit more riskily at other times, depending on what kind of things you're doing and what kind of things you want. So this is a very important area to navigate in life. You definitely do not want a life that's so certain, that feels so certain, because it's always an illusion. People often think, okay, I'll spend more time at home, I'll stay in bed, that's all nice and certain and comfortable. That ain't certain and comfortable. You're missing your life because you're at home, so you're missing the things that you could have done. Not easy to do when obviously you're suffering from OCD, really tired, can be very difficult to do. But every day that goes by is happening. Whether we stay in bed, whether we stay in the house, every day is still ticking over. So life's uncertainty. We don't know what's coming. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going on in our own bodies. We don't know anything like what we think we do. And it's so key, because we tend to think with our body, I zoom in on that mole, for example, that needs to be checked for cancer. But then we miss all the other internal organs, thinking, they're all right. I'm sure my liver's all right, my heart's all right and everything. And we tend to go along that line, but that's because we are thinking that those parts are certain, whereas internally we have no idea what's going on. I could have cancer right now, have no idea. I could be dead in 2 months and have no idea that was coming. This is all in the realm of possibility. And we know it happens because it happens to other humans. And we see it happen, but we never think it happens to us, okay? So that's a key part, because what tends to happen is we tend to have this illusion of certainty in ourselves. Someone asked me years ago, and this was a key part of recovery, do you think you'd ever get a disease? I think, no, it's unlikely. I'm fit, healthy. No, that happens to somebody else. But it happens to me, but I didn't think that, because at that time I was living in this very rigid mindset, very certain in my head of everything. Like everything felt almost like just so rigid and black and white views, how I was thinking. So nothing outside of that spectrum was being sort of taken in by me until now, where I see it through this journey as I've gone along. Things are uncertain. It's very uncertain territory, life, and the things I work through and that I go through. Hugely uncertain. I've got no idea what's coming. I've got no idea what's happening. I could get OCD. I could have a bad OCD again in the future. I think it's unlikely, but I can't guarantee it. Nobody can. Someone could be sober for 40 years. They can't guarantee they wouldn't drink again. They think it's unlikely, but there's no guarantee. So that is so important to register in your mind, because we tend to have these kind of rose-tinted glasses that we have as humans. If you think like something bad happens in the past, we tend to forget how bad it was. If you think of women with childbirth, if they remembered exactly the pain through history, then people would probably have less babies, but people don't, because they forget a lot of things. I'm talking more in history with a lot of, in the past, where it was obviously very high risk and lots of dangers, because we tend to keep moving, and that's how we've moved on through evolutionary, through our lives, because we've been able to view the world sort of optimistically and sort of block out in a kind of see things differently. Like, if you even look at your own life and you think of the past and you think of high school or something, you think, oh, this was a great memory, that's a great memory. You actually think back to those times. A lot of those times was very, very miserable. But you thought, maybe they weren't. But you think, looking back, you look at them with rose-tinted glasses, because our mind does that. Things aren't exactly how we think they are. It's how we interpret them and how our mind interprets them going backwards. So it will often view it very differently. So that's really important. It's really important to remember that, because if you don't, it's very easy to think we're living in this certain world where everything's certain, and then we chase it and then we go after it because we think that is where all the answers are found, when it isn't. I don't want a life that's bloody certain. That is so boring. I don't want that. I want the life where things are changing, where new exciting things happen, where 5 years looking back you think, wow, look at how much life's changed, hopefully in a positive way. And that has always been what sort of pushed me forward in anything I do, both in career, health, relationships, anything, is the excitement of change and trying different things and seeing different things in life. That's what it's all about. You don't want this rigid sort of life where everything is exactly the same. That is so dull. That is so boring. You're only going to get what you've already seen. It's like holidays where you go to the same place. And I do that a lot often, because often I'm working a lot, so it's easy to do that. But the thing is, because I know what it's going to be like, so I can still work around it. I don't have to think too much. But that's boring in reality, because I'm missing out on going to so many other things. Because I'm going to the same thing. I miss it. Same with restaurants. Often I think, oh, I'll go to the same restaurant because I know what's on the menu. I don't have to think about it because I'm often rushing around. But then I'm missing out on whole new experiences. You're only going to see what you've always seen before until you make change. So change is so important in our lives, because if we don't go and make that, what's life about? It's about change. Change is where everything happens. If you want absolute safety, you stay in the same job you've always had. There's nothing wrong with that, though, because that can be very, very, very good for forming the base for the rest of your life. There's nothing wrong with that. And you could stay playing the same sport, stay going to the same places and everything, or you could change it up. Now, there's pros and cons to both. You don't want to, like a lot of people online will say, oh, change your life and do all of this, and then that can have a bad outcome. And so you need to make sort of careful, balanced decisions, not just rush things on an impulse, or especially with OCD, it always tell you need change. Oh my God, what if my life's boring? What if I need to change? What if my relationship's boring? What if I need to change? You don't need to. It's a little bonus at times, but if your OCD is it's a bonus at times, obviously, but if your OCD is latching onto that, you've got to be very careful, because it's going to try and tell you need to get out of this situation. You need to move out of this situation instantly. Now. That's what it does. I'm speaking very fast today. I've just realised this. I need to slow down, live in the moment, but I've got somewhere to go in about 5-10 minutes, so I was trying to fit it all in. I am going to be back on here doing a lot more snippets on here, which will be a lot of short videos on OCD that I'll be hopefully doing every day, and lots of question and answers. And if you do have any question and answers, you can send them to me on the DM. Just DM me at the top on the page. Any of the questions you want to ask in Instagram Live. I can't answer the questions individually on the on the DMs for just in private messaging. I can answer them for things to be covered in the Instagram lives. And we are going to be doing some scheduled Instagram lives soon, where you will be able to see the time it's coming up, and we'll do the question and answers at a set time, so that you can see that when I'm definitely on, so that you can be ready to come in and ask questions for that. I will also be having headphones on during that, so that one of the moderators can read out the questions that are being asked, so that I get to cover lots of your questions when obviously we're scrolling through with a lot of people, and sometimes I miss them, so that we can try and cover the majority of them. Guys, great to see you all. I will be back on here in the next few days, hopefully tomorrow or maybe later today. And I'll see you guys then. Take it easy. See you later.